Good morning, and thank you for joining this briefing for an update on the situation in Israel. My name is Mark DeCourcy, and I'm the Senior Vice President of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And I have the responsibility here at the Chamber for our Crisis Relief and Recovery Program. First, I want to reiterate the Chamber's public statement from over the weekend, that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce strongly condemns the heinous attacks on Israel. Further, we extend our heartfelt condolences to the people of Israel and stand in solidarity with them as they battle the scourge of terrorism. Here at the Chamber Foundation, our purpose is to harness the power of business to create solutions for the good of America and the good of the world. More specific to the crisis today, we are here to help companies help people. Many innocent people have been affected and continue to be affected throughout the region by this crisis. First, we'll get a situational update from the leaders of the Embassy of Israel here in the United States, and then from the U.S. State Department, and finally from the American Chamber of Commerce in Israel. Then we will have time to answer your questions on how you can best provide assistance. Given the size of our audience, over 500 organizations, we'll ask you to submit those questions through the chat function on this Zoom call. Our staff will consolidate the questions, and our moderator will direct them to our guest speakers. But before we get started, I want to share that even though the Chamber Foundation has been responding to crises from around the world for the last 20 years, and even though I've led this effort here for the last 10, this situation is new. There is no script for this humanitarian response, and there is no playbook. But what is not new is the compassion and generosity of American businesses, the determination of our nonprofit partners to provide relief, and the resolve of the American people to help. We'll share with you what we know. We'll be honest and tell you what we don't. And our commitment to you is this: to do our best to get you the answers you need to help those in need. Let's get started. I want to turn the call over to my colleague, Josh Cram. He is the Vice President of International Strategy and Partnerships here at the Chamber, and he will introduce the Embassy of Israel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We are grieving with the people of Israel today who have experienced the unfathomable. Israel is a special place for so many of us. We have beloved friends, family, and colleagues there. Many of us have lived there, studied, traveled all across the country. We feel a spiritual, familial kinship, and between Americans and Israelis, our ties run deep. And Israel is a special place for the American business community, which has deep, deep roots in the country and tens of thousands of employees who are doing some of the most cutting-edge, innovative work in the world. Our hearts are broken, and we've lost the words to describe what we have just witnessed. The Chamber and its foundation are uniting together to support those impacted by the terrorist attacks by bringing the business community and the U.S. and Israeli governments together. On Sunday, as Mark said, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, led by our president and CEO, Suzanne Clark, made our position very clear. The U.S. Chamber strongly condemns the heinous attacks on Israel, and we stand in solidarity with Israel. And the Chamber and our foundation are mobilizing support for the victims in partnership with our partners within American Jewish organizations and Israeli aid groups. We're in touch with our partners in the Israeli government and the private sector, including Amcham Israel, whose chairman you will hear from shortly, as we further explore ways for the American business community to provide assistance during this difficult time. The Chamber Foundation has set up a resource page for companies looking for guidance on where to donate and a corporate aid tracker so we can catalog all of the great efforts underway and share and amplify across the business community. We encourage you to share those resources far and wide. We have seen so many business leaders and CEOs in the US, around the world, coming out strongly to condemn these attacks and support our friends in Israel. I know this means a lot. Now the next step is to begin putting action behind those words. And that's why we're hosting this briefing today. The Chamber has had a long-standing platform focused on strengthening U.S.-Israel economic ties. We do it through the U.S.-Israel Business Council. We have members, partners, and friends all across the country and in Israel many who I know are tuning in from Israel. We're reaching out to you. We are here to support you. Let us know how we can help. We will also convene our members in the coming days and weeks to start thinking about the broader economic implications for Israel as a result of this attack, and to start putting together some smart policy ideas on what the U.S. government can do to support Israel's economy and strengthen U.S.-Israel economic ties. Our two governments have been at the cutting edge of thinking about smart economic policy going back to 1985 when we signed the first free trade agreement. And this will be a moment to think about how we deepen U.S.-Israeli ties in so many ways, including in our economies. If you have ideas or want to be involved, let us know. It's now my pleasure and honor to introduce my longtime friend and partner, Eliav Benjamin, the Deputy Chief of Mission of the Embassy of Israel. Eliav, I know that your family and your staff at the embassy have personally been impacted and will be personally impacted by this. I hope you're well. And let me turn the floor over to you for your thoughts.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Mark, for all your remarks, and thank you even more for your ongoing support and friendship, and to all of you on the call as well. For your support and friendship, which is so meaningful beyond words to me personally, to us here at the embassy, but to Israel at large. Companies, private people, individuals, leadership, everybody. And if there is anything that is keeping up our spirit and helping us go ahead in a steadfast way and determination, it is the international support. It's the support first and foremost from the US. And we're seeing this across the board. We're seeing this through statements, through President Biden's speeches, through the visit today of Secretary of State Blinken, tomorrow's Secretary of Defense, Austin. We're seeing this through the unbelievable support in Congress across the board, across the aisles. And there is no difference here between which party one is affiliated with, which religion, where we come from, color of skin, or anything like that. And this support is so important for us to be able to fight and win this war, which was launched on us last Saturday, just 6 days ago. And I must confess, I mean, it feels like such a longer time than 6 days with what we've been going through since then. Just to put things into context, we're talking about, to date, nearly 6,000 rockets that were fired on Israel. It wasn't just on Saturday, it wasn't just on Sunday, it is to this day now. Rockets being fired all across the country. In every single place, people are going into shelters and into their safe rooms, especially around Gaza, and sometimes also in the north and in the center of Israel. To date, we've had about over 1,100 people who have been killed that we can account for. We have about 3,500 people who are injured, and we have over 100 people who have been kidnapped into Gaza. We're talking about citizens, we're talking about men, women, children, the elderly, even at least one Holocaust survivor that I know of who is kidnapped into Gaza. And this includes also American citizens and other foreign nationals who are in Israel. Hamas doesn't discriminate between people. It is out there against anybody who is civilized, anybody who just happens to be in Israel. This is something they've been conducting for years, and they are now showing their true face in such a way, thinking that Israel at this time was perhaps weak. Looking at the discourse in Israel over the past 10 months in particular, and thinking that this is maybe the time to strike. What they didn't take into account was the resilience of the Israeli people, and the fact that when we have crises and when we have emergency situations, we actually do close ranks and we come closer together, and we're much stronger this way. And the formation yesterday of the emergency unity government is a part of this. But even before that, there was no daylight between left and right in Israel. Politics are aside. And this is a message that we're sending to Hamas, we're sending it, of course, to Hezbollah, to Iran, to any other foes, but we're also sending it to the entire world. Israel is strong. It's true, they hit us in a way that we did not necessarily expect. They hit us in a way that Israel has never, ever been struck. Even the Yom Kippur War just 50 years ago, which we're marking now, these days to date, wasn't such a blow when it came to the number of casualties in one single day and the atrocities that were conducted by Hamas as a terrorist organization towards our people. But again, Israel is strong, and Israel will continue to be strong, and we know how to come out stronger and better from all of this, because we are stronger and better. This is an unprovoked attack, but Israel will strike back, and Israel will also strike back in a way that instead of what we have had up to now of patches or band-aids on situations when we've had what we call cycles of violence, this time it is a full-fledged war. Again, not started by Israel, but Israel will finish it. And with the goal of basically crushing Hamas in a way that we bring back security to Israelis for a very, very long time, in a way that would also strengthen our economy in a very big way and make us even stronger than we have been up to now. Now, it's true, we're in an emergency situation now, and this is a time for support, and it's a time for solidarity, and we thank all of you for all of this as well. It's also a time to send a very clear message across the board to the private sector and to public sector and to countries around the world in the belief in the Israeli economy and the Israeli capabilities to come out stronger from this. And we will come out stronger, and a lot of this will be with thanks to all of you. And thanks to you believing in Israel, and thanks to you believing in the Israeli economy, and thanks to you believing in the Israeli know-how and capabilities of coming up with the next generation of technologies in sectors that we may not even be thinking about now. But this is where all of us and all of you come into play to work together towards these things. It's not necessarily going to be a short cycle now, this war. And it's easier perhaps to have the support today, this week, when people remember the unbelievable photos and footage and videos that have come out from everything that Hamas conducted in the southern part of Israel. It will be perhaps probably a bit more challenging going ahead when Hamas will start releasing photos from Gaza, and it will try playing with all our thoughts and with the international community of perhaps atrocities that they will try showing that Israel is conducting in Gaza. I'm calling all of us and all of you, don't buy into that. They will try with propaganda, as they've always done, but at the end of the day, Israel will win, and this is war. And it's a war not just for Israel, it's a war for the whole free world that we all believe in and that we all support. And this is something which is important, again, not just for today or for next week, but for 3 weeks from now, from a month from now and beyond that, to show the support and the solidarity with Israel. And any cooperation and initiative that you can come up with, each and every one of you will be more than happy to hear, more than happy to cooperate, or more than happy to work with in every way, whether it's on humanitarian issues for Israelis who are displaced and who have left their homes right now in the south, some of them also in the north, and come up with new initiatives and new creative ways of working together is something that is going to help also build up our spirit, but also push our economy in an even stronger way, working together with the US. And there is no better message than doing this through the business sector as well. So I think I'll stop there and hand it back to you, Josh.
Thank you, Eliav. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for partnering with us. Let me turn it now over to Kush Choksi, the Senior Vice President for Middle East Affairs, to take us forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Eliav, for all of the engagement and support. I've been at the Chamber for 14 years, and over those 14 years, we've worked very closely with your embassy and with our partners here, Oren Sagi, the chair of Amcham Israel, Oded Rose, the CEO of Amcham Israel, and many others. Our hearts go out to you, and the business community is there very much so as a partner in everything ahead. In that vein, one of our most valuable partners has been the State Department. The Secretary of State is on the ground as we speak, and the State Department has worked in close coordination with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, our U.S. Israel Business Council, and of course, we certainly work very closely, and our hearts go out to those at the U.S. Post in Israel as well. So I just want to recognize all of the contributions to the State Department, today represented by Ned Price, who I will introduce, who serves as Senior Advisor to Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. He worked at the Department of State since January 2021, when he assumed the role of the State Department spokesman. He has served in the national security arena for a long time, and a special assistant to President Obama on the national security staff, and a senior director for strategic communications. He's also worked with the Central Intelligence Agency and numerous other entities. So with that, Ned, thanks for taking the time today. We'll turn it over to you.
Kush, thank you very much for that introduction. Eliav, thank you so much for that presentation and all that you are doing, your embassy is doing to promote and to advance the partnership between our two countries, especially now. So thank you. Thank you to the Chamber for this opportunity. Very much appreciate the ability to share a few words. Look, this has been a difficult time for every one of us. Maybe some of you identify with this. I was thinking earlier this morning that there have been times since early Saturday morning, just because of the very frantic pace of the work, where I've almost felt this sense of numbness to what has transpired, to what is transpiring. There are moments where the urgency and the pace has seemed to overtake everything else. But then all of a sudden, these images, the feelings, they all come rushing back, they all come crashing down. And the more we learn, just the more awful the reality that our Israeli partners are facing, that American citizens are facing, that citizens of more than a dozen countries around the world are facing. The loss is staggering. It is in some ways unimaginable. And even for those of us who have lived through and who have responded to, from the perch of government, terrorist attacks around the world, something like this is just in some ways unbelievable. But it's the stories of our common humanity that have at these times provided really that only light, the resilience of the Israeli people, the goodwill of people around the world, the goodwill of people like you and the corporations and companies you represent, who are determined to do everything you can and we can collectively to support those in need. We especially appreciated the very strong statement that emanated from the Chamber over the weekend. Now is not a time for moral equivalence. Now is not the time for equivocation. Now is the time to clearly demonstrate exactly where we all stand, and the Chamber did that very clearly over the weekend. So let me spend just a minute or two describing not necessarily where we stand. I think we've made that clear, but what we're doing, and we're really focused on 4 primary lines of effort. Secretary Blinken, for those of you who have seen, landed in Israel earlier this morning. He had a chance to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Security Cabinet earlier today, the new unity government, to discuss these lines of effort, and he'll continue his travel over the course of the next couple of days throughout the region. But first and foremost, we are really focused on ensuring that the government of Israel has what it needs to defend itself, of course, in the immediate from Hamas, but any other actors in the region who might seek to take advantage of the situation. We have munitions and other forms of security assistance having arrived in Israel, been made available to our Israeli partners. We expect that more will be on the way. We also expect we may need to go to Congress to request additional security assistance from our Israeli partners, excuse me. And we've been really heartened to hear on a bipartisan basis the support that has emanated from Capitol Hill for our Israeli partners. In line with this, we're also sending a very clear message to every adversary or would-be adversary in the region. Now is not the time to take advantage of this. If any actor out there has designs to seek to leverage this crisis, as you heard from the president yesterday, our single message to them is don't. And the secretary reiterated that again today. Of course, a primary charge, second, of the Department of State is to support impacted American citizens and their families. We have a very talented group of embassy officials led by our charge d'affaires, Stephanie Hallett, on the ground, a consular section there that has been working nonstop 24/7 to support Americans who have been impacted by this. We've stood up a task force back here at the Department of State to try and triage some of those calls and to provide that assistance. Of course, there are some American citizens who wish to depart. Our message to the American citizen community has been that Ben Gurion remains operational. There are commercial options available, but we are exploring, and I expect just a little later today, we'll have more details on U.S. government facilitated charter options for Americans who wish to leave. And we're working with the American citizen community there to help with that. Third, we are working very closely on something that is just heinous, that has captivated, rightly so, the attention of the world, and that is the hostage situation that is developing in Gaza. We are doing everything we can, working with our partners in the Israeli government and governments throughout the region to secure their safe release. There is never any justification for acts like this, for terrorism, for hostage taking, the taking of civilians, and we are going to do everything we can to support the families, and most importantly, of course, to do everything we can to secure their safe release. I think the less we say about those specific efforts in public, the better. That has been our experience over the course of many hostage situations and wrongful detention situations over the years. But please know that we are doing everything that we possibly can. Let me just say a final word on the scale of the suffering. We're in this, of course, to support our Israeli partners during this time of need and well after this immediate crisis is behind us. Israel's doctrine since its founding has been to be able to defend itself by itself. But as you heard from the secretary earlier today, that won't ever be necessary because America will always be standing by our Israeli partners. And I think we've underscored that and underlined that with the assistance we've provided in the past few days alone. There have been an immense number of Israeli deaths. I hesitate to even use numbers because these numbers go up every single minute. There have been American citizens who have been killed as well, 25 to date. Unfortunately, we expect that number to go up. As I mentioned before, more than a dozen countries have had their citizens killed in this violence. There have also been Palestinian civilian deaths, all of which Hamas is ultimately responsible for. And Hamas rule in Gaza has imposed immense suffering and immense consequences on the Palestinian people there. We are doing what we can to support the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people to live with, as we say, equal measures of safety, of security, of prosperity, and dignity as their Israeli brothers and sisters. That to be sure, has become all the more difficult and in some ways complex, but in many ways all the more urgent as well, because again, the human toll of this has been just staggering. But I just wanted to return to where I started. It is the goodwill of people like you on this call, the outpouring of support we've seen from people and countries around the world that has provided a light in these times of darkness, that has reminded us all of our common humanity in this time of Israel's need. The State Department will continue to be a partner to the private sector. I think many of you are regularly in touch with our department, our Bureau of Economic Affairs, our Undersecretariat, responsible for these relationships. But please do not hesitate to be in touch. If we can provide feedback, guidance, support, we will do all we can to support your efforts, because they are so vital during this time especially. So with that, I'll turn it back to our friends at the Chamber. Kush, Josh, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ned. We certainly appreciate that, and certainly don't hesitate to call upon the business community on any of the ways that we can help you all, as you do all of the very important work on behalf of us all. In that same vein, our next speaker, Oren Sagi, the chair of Amcham Israel, will speak with us. Oren is on the ground. He, joined by his colleagues Oded Rose at Amcham Israel, have worked tirelessly over the years on behalf of furthering the collaboration between the American and Israeli business communities, but also, if I may say, more broadly with the region as well. So with that, Oren, let me turn it over to you, knowing the very difficult circumstances you are as you speak with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening to the Israeli team. So today I address you both as the Amcham chair in Israel, both as the managing director of Cisco in Israel, and a father of 3 kids in Israel. So no doubt we are in the middle of the toughest and most challenging time that Israel ever witnessed. This time will go into the page of history, and this is the biggest terror attack that the world has ever known. Since the beginning of the conflict, we have more than 1,000 casualties, several thousand wounded, people who have been kidnapped. One of the big dramas that we have today in Israel, we have more than 20,000 people displaced from all of the different cities, villages, kibbutz in the southern part of Israel. So this is a situation that we live in. And we have a great responsibility. As Amcham, as the business sector, I will share a personal story. As a father of 3 kids, 2 of my kids have been drafted to the army. And my son is in the south without cellular from Sunday. So we all pray for him to come back safely home. On the business side of the house, I called Chuck Robbins, the chair of Cisco, on Sunday. Chuck immediately said yes without me asking anything. And Cisco stand with Israel, deploying technologies, consultancy, crisis management, humanitarian support. Thanks go to our wonderful employees globally and locally, donating, providing different kinds of support to the displaced population, providing clothing. The story is that family which survive displaced, they have no clothing, no cars, no money. They have nothing with them, and this is part of the humanitarian crisis that we face today. As a business sector, as Amcham in Israel, we engage with the Business Israeli Forum in order to form a platform to enable fundraising locally and globally. We already raised $10 million. We sent today vouchers for the displaced families in order for them to have the ability to buy the necessary first thing in order to survive these very, very tough days. What I would like to call this unique conversation, all of our business partners and Amcham U.S., there is a great impact of the U.S. support of Israel, whether this is Biden's speech He gave 3 different speeches, and the impact of the speech, both on the moral of our population, both on the impact of our military power, and of course, the strong commercial and business relationship between our 2 great nations. I know that many of our teams, many of our peers, many of the global companies would like to support, would like to contribute in any way or form. And we are working today as Amcham Israel and the Business Forum to provide a platform which will enable fundraising, which will go directly through NGOs to the displaced people. So this is our greatest opportunity to support. I would like to close by saying we are a very strong nation. We are the startup nation. We have a strong spirit, and we will overcome this tough situation. There is opportunity here for us, Israel and U.S., to stand together, and we see the many activities. And Belkin just visited the center in Tel Aviv, which support the displaced population, and this kind of impact is immersive. And I would like to call the Amcham and the people on this call to join these vectors of activities that can contribute to Israel in this tough situation. I would like to close by praying for the wounders and for all of the soldiers deployed, so they will all come back safely home. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Oren. And we certainly also pray not just for everyone in Israel, but also for your family as well. Thank you. And thank you for everything Amcham is doing. The Chamber will be a strong support of all of your efforts ahead. With that, let me now turn to Jennifer Meal from the U.S. Chamber for the next part of the program.
Great. Thank you very much, Kush. I'm honored to be here and again send my condolences as well to everybody suffering from Saturday's heinous terrorist attacks. I'm here with Rob Glenn, the Vice President from U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation for Resilience. And we'll go ahead and take questions from the audience. We see several very good questions that have already come in. Please keep the questions coming. We have an excellent panel that can give us really critical answers to be able to allow your companies and individuals to provide the necessary aid and help to pre-position aid for additional phases. We'll go ahead and start with one question that's come in. And Oren, you started to address this, but what are the most urgent humanitarian needs right now to support Israel's recovery? And how do you expect these needs to evolve over the coming weeks? I'd like to get, Oren, your perspective on the ground, as well as Eliav from the embassy, and Ned, anything that you're tracking coming in from the State Department, especially with Secretary Blinken's visit. Thank you.
Yeah, so the first immediate need that we are engaged with is the 20,000 displaced population. Families with no home to come back to, kids without schools, baby without toys. This is the first need. They do not have place to live. They have no equipment. They have nothing. What we are trying to do, finding locations, finding hotels, providing toys, providing people to go and work with the kids. And this is the main need that we have today, because from the military front, we know that the IDF will overcome this situation. From the civilian front, I think that this is part of the business sector, because this is where the business sector can impact the most.
Thanks, Oren. I know that there are a lot of questions coming in. So Jennifer and Josh have been talking with a number of member companies all week long. And so they have a few questions that they're going to be working their way through. We have more than 500 people registered for this call. So we were going to try our best to get through all the questions. I just wanted to reiterate something that Mark shared a couple of minutes ago, and that's many innocent people have been affected and continue to be affected throughout the region by the crisis. And our commitment is to really try to get the answers that you need and to help those in need. We may not have all the answers today, but with the experts that we have, hopefully we can get a little bit closer to our understanding. This is a question potentially for every participant on the call today, and that's really about specificity around a needs list. In a humanitarian crisis, typically there's a list that comes out, or many lists that come out. Healthcare resources are certainly something that's been asked about by a number of different entities, both associations as well as companies. Any insight as to a list for healthcare resources that potentially may be coming forward?
So maybe I can comment. The amount of requests that we are getting as the business forum and as Amcham Israel is immense. We get more and more requests. I will give one example. Hospital in the southwest Israel, in the city of Ashkelon, Hospital Barzilai got a direct hit today. And they approached the business sector in Amcham Israel saying that they need support in getting the hospital back into operation. This is one example. Yesterday, we got a request in Amcham, and Oded, who is with us on the call, to have emergency supply of medical equipment. And we were able to work with the Amcham board of directors of Teva, and we gave equipment on the spot. So there are many requests. For your question, we need to verify from the Israeli side of the house that there is a one list of all of the requests. Today, what we see, there are several entities from the private sector, which work with the government. So I believe that in the next few hours and days, the picture will be clear, but we do not have the time because the people with the need have the need today. And this is why Amcham Israel and the Business Forum started to work and to raise the money in order to send to the immediate need that we are aware of. But I believe that in the next few days, we will have bigger and bigger list of requests.
Let me just offer one element from the State Department, and of course, there's no one-size-fits-all response to any tragedy, whether it's man-made or not, and of course, a tragedy of this proportion. But it is typically our advice, and it is our advice in this case, that rather than in-kind donations, that cash donations, monetary assistance is always going to be most efficient, and especially monetary donations to those organizations, established organizations that are already on the ground. Not only does it avoid the complications of in-kind contributions, getting it there, getting it to those who need it most, but it also allows these organizations who are in the midst of the response to evolve their operations based on the need at the time. And of course, the need that our Israeli partners are experiencing now is not almost certainly the need that they will have a week from now or a month from now. And the response to this will be going on for quite some time. I understand that there are a number of organizations out there, including the Chamber Foundation, that do have a list of organizations who are active on the ground. Organizations like the International Committee for the Red Cross is often a principal player in these types of responses. But from our perspective, monetary assistance to those organizations that are vetted, that are operational, and that are already rendering their services tends to be more.
Thanks, Ned. You actually were addressing a question I was going to ask next to you related to that. There are a couple of questions, I think, for State Department, for you, and that was, an expected timeline for some sort of announcement on those charter flights. There are a couple of questions in the chat related to that. So I don't know if you can give a window of time on that, or if that's just something that we'll just have to monitor. And I guess the following aspect of that is where should people who need that information get it? Is that from the State Department website or some other source?
Thank you. Really appreciate that question. You will have more details on this today. We will have a statement out from the Department of State with additional information, but it is critically important for all Americans, whether they need assistance or not at the present moment, to go to the website of our embassy in Jerusalem. There is a form that will collect their contact information and will collect details of their current situation. It will ask them whether they might need help leaving the country if they choose to do so. All of that will really help us have all of this information in one place. And so when we are in a position to provide more details on these charter options, we'll have their details, and we can begin to manifest those Americans who do choose to leave. I'll just add one additional point, and this situation is somewhat different from other tragedies in that there are commercial options that are still available. Ben Gurion Airport remains operational. El Al flights are continuing. Of course, El Al is part of is undergoing this massive worldwide mobilization to bring reservists back to Israel, and so they have capacity that can take those who wish to leave the country to not only countries in the region, but there are still some direct flights to the United States. Now, capacity on those flights is limited, and so that's why we're exploring. We'll have more details on charter options, but I would just implore all Americans or the family members of Americans who may be on the ground in Israel to fill out the form, to let us know who you are, and to let us know what kind of assistance you may need.
Thank you, Ned. And before we go to the next question, there was something came in that was related to what you just addressed. And would this form also apply to American citizens that are in Gaza?
Absolutely. This form applies to American citizens who are anywhere in Israel, West Bank, or in Gaza. And our commitment to American citizens is precisely the same, regardless of where they are. Now, of course, there are going to be additional complications and challenges to work through, especially for those Americans who are in Gaza. That is something that we are working through urgently. We're having discussions with our Israeli partners. We're having discussions with our Egyptian partners. But our commitment to support Americans wherever they are is the same regardless.
Great, thank you very much. And a question now about the business climate. As many of you know, Israel's home to more than 2,500 U.S. companies. And as Josh mentioned, employs about 70,000 direct employees in Israel. These facilities include more than 200 R&D centers, and these are really critical bloodline operations for U.S. companies, their future operations and their current. U.S. CEOs, like you heard from Cisco, are reaching out to their Israeli employees and leadership about their safety and their mental health. Some companies are already announcing work from home policies or helping to rebalance workloads with colleagues overseas. A lot of companies are asking us, how can they help their Israeli employees during these times and their partners, and through volunteerism or support. So we'd love to hear any ideas that the Amcham has on this front.
Yes, I can share some best practice that we have both in Cisco and both in Amcham Israel. And eventually in Cisco, we have 800 employees based on different locations, live in different cities. Some of them live in the border with Gaza. Some of them are without housing today. And our first and foremost activity on day one of the war was to make sure that all of our employees are safe and their families. And once we did it, now we enable our employees to have a different kind of programs. Whether this is time to give, we enable our employees to donate, to volunteer, to serve, give them 10 days time to give on above the regular PTOs. We have mental health programs in order to support our employees in the tough times. Been provided both in a local Hebrew language and English language with professionals who support the families. In addition, we see that the employees would like to engage. Not all of them. We are aware that some of the employees are in the middle of the most tough situation that they have ever witnessed. And as such, we give them the freedom of choice, whether they would like to work, whether they would like to rest at home, critical time off, or just be at home, or there are tens of employees outside of my office now working with the command and control of the volunteering centers, fundraising, sending equipment. One of my employees took his entire city to take clothes from the closet, put it on track, and send it to the displaced population. So eventually, I think that the organization, the US companies, and as you mentioned, there are thousands of US companies, employees based in Israel, have the opportunity to be engaged in different ways and form and to create great impact. I'm proud that Cisco see it as a mission, our vision as an inclusive future for all. So we have all of the supporting programs, but Amcham and with Oded leadership, we lead with the board an activity to see that each and every Amcham member is working with his teams in Israel in order to see how can we support. And I think that 100% of the companies said yes. And this is power of the companies. Now what we would like to obtain on this call is to have the ability to connect also to Amcham US in order to double down and to leverage on this support.
There's some questions in the chat. And again, we're trying to understand the situation. It's still early. It's in the first week of the situation. There are some questions about disaster relief programs inside of companies and really trying to navigate the landscape. I mean, there's quite a bit of interest from companies on how to help throughout the region, and so there's a number of different ways that have been explored, I think, pretty openly. But I also know that this is a very sensitive situation, and it's an ongoing conflict. So, Ned, from your perspective, maybe do you have some insight as to where and maybe how the private sector can channel some of their interest? I know we have the resource page. There's a number of other endeavors that are underway. Do you suggest patience right now, or what's your recommendation for that interest from the private sector?
Well, one, I think it is critically important that the private sector interests remain. And I think the challenge we've seen in previous tragedies is that the world's attention is focused on it in the initial days and perhaps weeks before something else comes along. And so the State Department, and I know all of you on this screen, are going to do everything you can to keep the world's attention focused on this. And so it's important for the private sector and all of those who wish to help to move as quickly as they can, but is also responsible. From the State Department perspective, we're not in a position to endorse specific charities or organizations, but there are a number of organizations out there, like, of course, the Chamber Foundation, that we would point people to, and we have pointed people to have a list of resources for those companies who wish to get involved, who wish to contribute their wares, their resources, their know-how. And it is just critically important from our perspective that not only companies do that, but that we not lose our focus on this in the coming days and weeks, regardless of what other headlines bring. We are going to remain focused on this, and we know that so many of our partners are as well, fortunately.
And I think to that end, just to kind of underscore the questions that I'm seeing, and potentially the embassy might have some insight on this as well, and that is the notion that there needs to be an outlet for the humanitarian need, regardless of where it comes. So it's incredibly difficult to maneuver right now in the region, and so there's potentially some options, including a humanitarian corridor, and some other arrangements to help those in need that need some help. And that's also where the private sector is, I think, looking to potentially support, and they're looking for some direction. Can you, either Ned or the embassy, Eliav, can you give us some insight as to maybe what that with that, how viable is an option like that at this time?
I'm happy to start and would welcome any additions from others. It's very challenging, but it is something that we're focused on. Of course, as I said just a moment ago, innocent Israelis, far too many innocent Israelis were killed in these heinous attacks. But innocent Palestinians have been killed as well, all ultimately the result of Hamas's actions. We are discussing this with our Israeli partners, with our Egyptian partners. We want to see to it, just as our Israeli partners want to see to it, that civilian casualties are minimized. What differentiates us, the United States, Israel, fellow democracies, from the perpetrators of these attacks is our care and our caution for civilian life, for innocent life. And we know, we've heard even in the past few hours from our Israeli partners that in their response to this, of course, they are going to abide by and place on their operations all of the restrictions that they can to minimize the potential for civilian casualties. When it comes to corridors, when it comes to humanitarian passage, this is a work in progress. It's been a discussion in the Middle East with our partners as recently as the past few hours for American citizens who were in Gaza, but also for those citizens of Gaza who wish to leave, who had nothing to do with Hamas's actions, who reject Hamas. The message we've been sending, and I think everyone on this call knows, is that Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. And I think we are seeing a desire of many innocent civilians in Gaza to differentiate themselves from these heinous actions, and in some cases to leave. So it's something we're looking very closely at, and it's something that the Secretary will continue to work on. Others in our government will continue to work on in the coming days with our partners.
Thank you for that, Ned. That's very helpful.
Robbie, if I may add only for the support side of the house and the work with the U.S. Chamber, the need is an immediate need because the crisis is today. People are without housing for 5 days. So there is a call for urgency on this matter. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll close it out with one last question from my end, from the company side. You know, as Rob had mentioned about some of the air travel being impacted, there's also impacts on shipments, shipping lanes and shipping corridors. Curious to hear if there's anything, any ports that are being, you know, expedited, or any initiatives underway to expedite some of that support into Israel.
Jennifer, you're referring to a question for me?
Whoever has any thoughts or solutions on this challenge of shipping,
Maybe
I'm
I
looking
can-
more at cargo.
maybe I can-
Odette, please. Yeah.
Maybe I can jump in here. We are working together with the Israeli Foreign Ministry, and they are working with El Al and the other Israeli airlines. Cargoes can mostly be only sent through a wide body aircraft, and if the situation is going to get worse, the Israeli companies are going to fly to 4 major destinations. These are JFK in New York, Frankfurt, Paris, and London. So any shipments, if the situation will get worse, will need to be routed through those 4 locations. This is the information we have currently, and I know the Israeli National Emergency Authority is also working on other solutions to get other cargo planes. Ships are still coming and entering the ports, especially in Haifa. And so shipments are coming, and the Israeli government is trying to get ready to, to give answers if the situation gets worse.
Great, thank you very much. And we'll turn it to the embassy, Eliav. If you have any final closing thoughts before we wrap up. Or Amcham partners on the ground, Oded or Oren.
Yes, I would like to thank you. To thank the U.S. Chamber and to thank to all of the attendees on the call. We can feel the partnership, the support, the willingness to support. We know that we are in tough times, and we know that we are heading into tough few days, weeks, maybe more. And we really rely on the partnership with this forum. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. I'll turn it over to Rob and to Mark DeCourcy of the Chamber Foundation for our final call to action.
Well, I just want to thank all of the colleagues at the Chamber and the Chamber Foundation for all of the hard work that is being done, but the real hard work is being done in Israel right now. And Oren and Oded, thank you for joining. Thank you for your leadership. Very much appreciate that. And know that this is not the only time that we will be convening a call like this, or in this format, or in a smaller format. I know Josh and Jennifer and the international team will be holding a call for members next week. And we're also thankful for those that are joining today. This is still beginning. The partnership that we have talked about, I think, is strengthening. This is day 6 of this conflict, and our condolences go out to those that have been harmed by the scourge of terrorism. And it's also clear that more needs to be done. So since Sunday, we've had the resource page on the Chamber Foundation website, along with the statement from our CEO, Suzanne Clark. And then we'll keep that updated. And so as information becomes more clear, we'll post it there. As there's a need to do additional convenings, we'll do those as well. And lastly, you've heard and talked with a number of companies about just the dynamic and how complex it is. That's also why we're here, both on the Chamber side, then also on the foundation, is to help companies help people. And so with that, I just really want to say thanks again for joining today. There are several links in the chat. And then again, if you need anything from us, just reach out to resilience@uschamber.com, and we'll quickly follow up. Thank you for joining the call today.